Hey, welcome to the second episode of Indie Cafe 2. And today, the one word that describes the show is vinyl, VINYL. And today, our special guest will be Bryan Ekus, co founder with Larry Jaffe of the Making Vinyl event, plus the Making Vinyl Packaging Awards event. And I want to lead off before we get to our guest by saying a couple of things. Um, First of all, the co-host Judith couldn't be on, my partner, but we have both been major legendary designers, and in album and 45s, we were nominated for the National Design Award, and we're in the MoMA, AIGA, and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archival collection, and authored 21 pop culture books. Patrick Bamburak, our co-host, is a incredible musician. He's the producer of this show, and Patrick has a show called It's Night Music on New HD in New York, where rock lives, and you can search it out on newhdmedia.com. So with that, I'll go into a couple of things I think support our show and vinyl. One thing I want to mention is that Judith and I have an amazing vinyl background. We've always been a vinyl supporter, as Patrick is, and we authored two major 45 books, which was a vinyl supportive. One was called 45 RPM, and Larry Jaffe wrote a great review of it in 2002, and the book sold out. And the second book was 545s. Again, the visual history of the 45 record sleeve in 2010, and it's doing very well. We've done a number of HD series, which includes the vinyl subject. One of them is the 10 episode series, Best Design LPs and 45s, a major part of it, which is on YouTube. And the second one is Famous Music Designers series. And the third is the Art of Vinyl cover show, 12-inch and 7-inch with soundtrack, 12-inch view on YouTube. These are all vinyl oriented in their content. All these shows are produced by Patrick Bamburak, who's done a fantastic job. Judith and I are making vinyl judges every year, including this year coming up. And we're proud to enter our vinyl this year in the Making Vinyl event for the first time. And now I'll go ahead and read something that's oriented to making vinyl, and then we'll lead into Bryan. This is the first issue, 2017, which went along with the event. And in the issue is a great Jack White was a keynote speaker. And as you well can see, picture of Jack. And he had this incredible quote, which reads, "The size, shape, smell, texture, and sound of a vinyl record. How do you explain to that teenager who doesn't know that it's a more beautiful musical experience than a mouse click?" I love that quote. And Jack, as you well know, is a famous musician, Third Man Records. He was a keynote speaker at the first event with Michael Kurtz, a co-founder of Record Store Days. It was an amazing event. The uh, the second issue, 2018, they all were well designed too, by the way, and has a picture of the judging group, packaging judging group in it, which includes me and everybody else. And there's Larry on the right, far right. But these issues were amazing. That went along with the events. Um, and the last thing I want to read, which talk about timely and about our show, was sent to me by Billboard magazine because I'm a NARA's voting member. So is the Grammy issue, and there's a one-page article which the at the top it says "Better late than never." Growing demand for vinyl along with manufacturing delays, is boosting album back up the charts months after release. Okay, that's how it starts. And then I'm reading, for the first time since 1986, U.S. vinyl record sales could reach $1 billion this year, which already has the top four biggest sales weeks for the format since MRC data began tracking music sales in 1991. Partly as a result of the pandemic, which has kept music fans home and prevented them from spending money on concert tickets, vinyl sales have skyrocketed. Unit sales in the United States grew 46.2% in 2020 and another 81% so far in 2021, according to MRC data. The other part of it is interesting. They mentioned a couple of artists in 2020. One was Lady Gaga with a Chromatica album, which she had a run of limited edition picture discs, a large amount of colored discs, and huge amount of black vinyl. That vinyl sale boost put her to number one in Billboard. Number two was Paul McCartney's album, Paul McCartney 3, and that he had a large vinyl run, and he too was boosted to number one because of the vinyl sale. The third artist mentioned was Rodriguez in 2020, a new artist. And again, he had the same story. The vinyl sales pushed him to number one. So now we're getting into the importance of vinyl, the effect, the influence of it. And from there, we'll go right into it with Bryan Ekus. The first question I want to ask you, Bryan, is how was Making Vinyl event conceived, the inspiration for it, the beginning of it?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, guys, thanks very much for the invitation to be here. Very, very honored to participate in this session. My co-partner, Larry Jaffe, unfortunately couldn't make it with us tonight, but it was very interesting as far as how we kind of conceived the idea of Making Vinyl. Before we actually produced the event, Larry and I have known each other for many years, probably close to 20 years. As Larry was a journalist for, let's say, a lot of the physical media magazines. And we met through that particular channel because I was working with a company that was actually making machines that was loading magnetic tape into video cassettes and audio cassettes. And then from there, that same particular company moved into CD manufacturing, DVD manufacturing. So we were in touch for a very long time. And during that time also, I was one of the founders of what was called the Media Tech Association. And the Media Tech Association covered all aspects of physical media manufacturing. And it was always, though, that we were moving away from the older technologies and moving into the newer technologies. And then, of course, as streaming started to become more popular, you started to see, of course, the decline of physical media. But then at the same time, before I think that actually necessarily happened, Larry and I were talking about the idea, along with another gentleman, Dave Hill, who sadly just passed away just a few weeks ago, about the concept of putting together, we'll say, an event in regards to vinyl record manufacturing. And that time too, I kind of transitioned from working with the Media Tech Association to another company called Colonial Purchasing. And Colonial Purchasing is a group that bands together and buys, we'll say, raw materials together, and for the physical media industry. And we bought a lot of plastic. And one of the guys that was on our board of directors was Steve Sheldon, and Steve Sheldon ran Rainbow Records. And we just pretty much kind of pitched the idea to Steve as being something that maybe Colonial Purchasing would like to organize, because we thought, well, maybe there would be an opportunity for the vinyl record pressing plants to band together also to purchase their materials to lower their costs. And Steve kind of was really hesitant about the whole idea. But, as vinyl started to get more and more popular, I kept on pushing him about doing the event. And he said, you know what, maybe now is a good idea because, vinyl's getting much bigger. It might be a really nice idea to put together a forum where people of like-minded people can come together. So he said, well, at our next board meeting, why don't you bring it up and see what the other board members think? So I pitched it to the board. The board thought it was a good idea. So shortly after that, I went back to Larry and said, hey, are you still interested in producing this event with me? And he said, yeah, sure. But when do you think about when you want to do it? And this was in June. And I said, well, I've got the green light and I want to go as quickly as possible. So do you think that we might be able to do it by November? And he kind of gave me that look like, oh my God, that's like not a lot of time to do something like that. But everything really started to fall into place because we were looking for locations as where to do it. And it was about that same time when Jack White opened up his own pressing plant in Detroit, and I'm from Detroit. And I thought, man, this could be a really good idea to do something in Detroit and see if, we'll say, the folks at Third Man Pressing were open to the idea of allowing some people to come in and see their new facility. So we connected with Ben Blackwell, who works directly with Jack. I think he's the co-owner of Third Man Pressing. We said, what would you think about the idea? I don't know if he thought we were serious in the beginning, but again, he was looking at a way to promote his plant, and he thought, well, if you guys can bring in, some people, would be open to the idea. And Larry said, well, what about having Jack speak at the event?
Right.
I think he was kind of joking about it, but Larry is kind of funny sometimes because he has these dreams of who could be speaking at Making Vinyl events. And he said, I had a dream about Jack speaking at it.
Wow.
So we pitched the idea. We didn't hear anything from, we'll say, Jack as far as him speaking, but he gave the green light to do the event and then bring people into his plant. And then also when we thought about, we'll say, doing it, our idea is that we might have maybe 100 people attending. We weren't really sure. And then, we started to put out the feelers. We started to get some pretty good speakers. And the event just kept on growing and growing and growing. Yeah. And at our first event, I think we had over 350 people that participated. And it was like 2 weeks before, that's when Jack confirmed that he would do a keynote speech, which was absolutely awesome. And we had Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC also on the second day, keynote speaker. Right. And he was amazing too. So we just hit 2 home runs with that event. And it just has been growing every year since.
And you've been in different locations too. You've been, I think, Berlin, I believe, or Hollywood, or is that true?
Right. Yeah, we were in Detroit for 2 consecutive years, and then we moved and decided that we want to bring it over to Europe. So in 2019, we brought it over to Berlin, and we did Berlin in May of 2019, and then we did Hollywood in it was October, I believe, was the actual time of 2019. And the idea was to potentially bring it back to Los Angeles again in 2020. But of course, COVID hit and we couldn't do that. So we actually, instead of doing something physically, we did the event virtually. And we had over 450 people go online with us, which was pretty cool.
Right.
We weren't sure. Again, it was one of those things that we have no experience of doing anything online. Not many people did. I did a lot of research into different formats and platforms. And I found a platform out of Holland, which was pretty decent, which gave us a lot of opportunity for networking and running it in a way that really didn't break the bank. So we did it that way. And we thought that maybe we would do it the same way again in 2021. But I think people are really at the point right now where they want to just come together.
Yeah.
And now that things are kind of loosening up, we have kind of taken the decision that we would like to do our next event in person.
And
We haven't decided 100% yet on the time and day or location, but that's what we're shooting for. And we want to do it with a partner also, if that's potentially possible.
And then you have panels, right? You have different panels in the event.
Yeah, we cover, we'll say, well, the original idea was to really focus on the manufacturing of vinyl. So that our first event was vinyl manufacturing centric. And as we've developed it over the different events in different periods of time, we've really dived into other aspects such as packaging, the actual cutting and lathing process, how to prepare your vinyl, your audio tracks for vinyl. So, and we've gotten to distribution, because distribution, of course, has always been, we'll say, difficult in regards to sending the vinyl out on time, making sure that it matches with your digital release, which I don't know if we've made that any better or worse, but with COVID now, that's almost like impossible, because there's so many delays in manufacturing at the moment and supply chain. But yeah, we really dive into it so that if you're coming for the first time, you can really understand what goes into manufacturing and producing vinyl and distributing it. And of course, if you've been doing it now for the last, we'll say, 7 to 10 years, it's a great opportunity to express where may be the difficulties in the whole supply chain process. And then we kind of try to work through that as a group, as how we can get vinyl in people's hands faster, better, and meet, we'll say, the expectation of the consumer.
Yeah, you did a webinar series that you interviewed me and Judith on album covers, which we were really happy to be on. But you had some incredible people on there in different areas of vinyl, the processing, the manufacturing. It was a really great series you did.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've really been trying to, we'll say, during the time of when we can't get together, of course, we really want to keep people thinking in the idea that, we're not just doing one event and we're done. We want to continue, we'll say, to produce these events and bring people together and to grow the event. And the idea with the webinars was to keep, we'll say, the Making Vinyl brand in,
right,
we'll say, the front of a lot of people. And we really have some great connections now with the industry. So as such, when we reach out to them, they're generally willing to share information, which is quite ironic, because I'm not used to competitors sharing information. It's especially coming from the CD, DVD world. It was never that you could get people to sit down and talk about, where they might need help. And I think a lot of that's because, when vinyl started to come back, there wasn't a lot of machines even available. There weren't any companies that were making machines at the time. So people were finding machines in museums. They were finding machines that might have been sitting in warehouses, dormant for multiple years. So people needed help to get those machines back up and running. Fortunately, now we have companies that are manufacturing new machines, but they are, a bit overwhelmed at we'll say, the enthusiasm in the industry right now, and they just can't keep up with what the industry needs.
And that Billboard article expresses that too, about the timing of it, where there's a lot of delays in the packaging, which we're talking about. And it takes months, many months sometimes, to get something out there.
Yeah, in 2019, before COVID hit, I've heard this, we'll say, coming from numerous pressing plants at that time. they could turn around a decent size run, 500 to 1,000 pieces, maybe in 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even less than that if they had all of the materials in place at the same time. But it's not always that particular case, because you might have, we'll say, the sleeves coming in from one manufacturer. You're pressing, of course. You want to make sure that you have all of the materials there. So there's a lot of logistics that go into creating the vinyl and putting it together with the packaging. And every vinyl is going to be different, because it's not that it's the same thing every time, because there's color gradients that are involved. There's special ideas that go into the packaging. So with all of that, there's a lot of coordination that goes into manufacturing vinyl itself. But now that we have, let's say, further supply chain issues, lead times for vinyl have gone from 6 to 8 weeks to 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So, that's where some people, of course, are getting very impatient. They don't want to wait that long. But it's going to take time. Whenever you have growth within a particular industry, you're going to have these growing pains. But as you mentioned, it keeps on growing, and as it continues to grow in that way, it will catch up. I think we'll get back to, we'll say, that particular point one day. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. 6 to 8 week type turnaround times, maybe by the end of next year, or let's say sometime in early 2023. We'll see that those lead times will start decreasing, because we'll see a lot more machines in the market. I know a lot of the pressing plants are planning or are already going through major expansions. So let's see. Let's hope that I'm right.
We just our album that we entered was printed in Germany through a record label in Australia called Riot Records, and they were on a 2-month. We were lucky; they were on a 2-month schedule, so we lucked out on that. I think it was printed in Germany though. The next phase, which is the Making Vinyl Packaging Awards event, which is, of course, my favorite. Judith and I are judging, and we have such great judges every year. The thing that I really like, believe it or not, since we went on virtual, Larry is able to pick out judges and actually try to help them out on that also worldwide. So we go on virtual now instead of years ago where the people had to be in LA or New York. Now it's like, we've had Roger Dean in England judge, Rob O'Connor in England. You know what I'm talking about. And also, the way the thing is set up, by the way, for judging, the pictures are amazing. That's what I can't get over. They're really beautiful visuals. And you can see, with the write-ups and everything, you can see everything perfectly, what you need to judge by. That's what I can't get over, is that everybody sends in really beautiful visuals. I don't think that's easy. It's like doing a book. When we did a book, we were crossing our fingers that the visuals are coming. But it's like, that's what happens every year. And of course, there's an amazing increase of entries. I mean, last year was phenomenal. I think last year was phenomenal. I want to also, we're going to put some pictures along with this interview of the judging over, I think, 2017 and 2018. You'll see some pictures. And it sort of shows what we go through. For instance, not only do we get, it's almost like I judged the Grammys for several years. It's the same thing. It's not only the cover art or the interior of the cover, it's also the disc, the labels. Everything's got to be in line with great design. And we judge that. We judge the vinyl. We judge the label. There's a lot of great stuff, by the way, coming in. That's unbelievable in that area. And then the inside the packaging, so when we talk about it, it's all about everything involved with the packaging. There's not one weak spot. The winners don't have one weak spot. You know what I mean? You've got to have everything really great design. And that's true. The Grammys do the same thing, by the way. So, the quality line is very good. And every year we've been on it, and I've seen the winners are always amazing. And even the people that don't win, Bryan, there's so many great designs that can't be winners, but they're incredible.
Yeah, we've been really very lucky as far as, we'll say, being able to produce the Making Vinyl Packaging Awards. We did the first one in 2017, and like you said, we had to do a lot of the judging in person.
Yeah,
And for Larry, who was running the event himself, it became to be was overwhelming for him.
yeah.
Because packages that were coming in and everything had to be cataloged. And then for those judges that we had, which we, of course, are very thankful for, they had to spend a good part of a day or so going through everything.
Yeah.
I know it was a lot of fun. I couldn't make the first one, or the second one. I came in late, but
yeah, the second one was at AIGA. I remember.
Right, we did it at AIGA in New York.
Yeah.
And then I said to Larry, I said, as this continues to grow, we got to figure out a way to make this easier for everyone. So we did some research. We found a really great online judging platform that we use. And you're right. It's not just that they're using their iPhone to take a picture of the album itself and then submitting it and saying, done. I mean, they're really taking a lot of time now to produce very good content. And so it's not only sometimes that you get very amazing high-res photos, but you're getting videos too, where people are explaining the process of why they decided to go with maybe a textured relief on the outside of the jacket, why they decided to go with these particular covers. And then it really all then tells the story. And I think that really helps the judges. And each one, I'm not a judge, but each one that I see is, just amazing. And I don't know how you guys actually narrow it down in the end, because they all look like winners to me.
You know what? I've been judging the Grammys for years. I've been judging Making Vinyl. Let me tell you, it is not easy. You know that. It's like It's like people ask me on an interview, "What is your favorite album covers?" It's like that. It's like you can't do it. I mean, the Roger Dean album book had so many great covers in it. You know what I mean? And it's relative to what we're talking about. It's really hard. There's so much great packaging out there, and when you see the pictures and the write-ups and the video, you see everything about it, and the great quality, by the way, again, of the pictures. You know exactly what's going on. That's the most important thing. There's no space about that. After seeing every entry exactly what it's about. And some people really go out on a lot more visuals than others, and as you well know. So it's like, and the quality line is unreal. So that's a big thing. I mean, so this thing is run, but I like the fact that it's a broader worldwide type of transmission with virtual, and that it takes, that these judges are all over the world, theoretically. And so you're not limited to the United States as before in the physical way as before. You had to be there. So that's a positive. That's one positive thing about it. It's amazing, which is very important, by the way, I think.
Yeah. And this year we have confirmed 28 judges all across the world, as you mentioned. And we've added a new feature to the judging this year as well. So the judges will go through, they'll actually be able to see each one of the submissions individually. They'll be able to see all of the content that supports it. But this year, now the public can also see, we'll say, what's been entered as well. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
So that now is something that is going to be factored into the judging. So maybe instead of having 28 judges, maybe we're going to have a couple million judges. I'm not sure.
That's interesting. That's amazing. That is really amazing.
Right. It's going to be fun. And then our plan is, we'll say, once we got it narrowed, because we have 15 categories, and usually what we do is we select 5 of the top finalists in each one of those categories, and we'll probably still bring that together as an in-person meeting, probably in December or early January.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
where we'll come together and we'll be able to go through that. So then we'll be able to take as far as the input, which has come from the public, and then of course all of the scores that
Oh,
have
that's
been
great.
accumulated from the judges itself. And
Will
I
that
think
be,
we're going to
where
be
will
able to
that
make.
be located? Do you know now, or it's too early? Where
It's
would that be
still too
located?
early. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really will come down to, again, when we'll be able to do it. It's funny for me because I've got a vacation that's booked the 15th of December for a week, and then after that's Christmas. So I keep it on telling people my last day of working is the 15th of December. So and that's coming up pretty quick already. So it might not be until January until we'll do the actual physical judging.
Yeah, I want to also mention that the Packaging Awards entries are open right now, and you can go to it on makingvinyl.com. So if anybody, designers out there, anybody feels they want to enter, they can do it right now as we're talking, and I want people to know that, so we can open it up now, to the outside world a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, it opened up last week. There's a small submission fee that goes along just to be able to cover the cost of the platform itself. But yeah, it's now open. The deadline for the first round of submissions is the 19th of November. And to be eligible for consideration, you should have produced the actual product itself. I think it's from November 2020 to November 19th of 2021.
Mhm.
So it's really a year that you have to take a look at what you've maybe manufactured with just in the recent past, and you still have time if you're waiting for something to be pressed or to go to market. There's still time to be able to enter that now.
Yeah, Judith and I are very happy that I think we came up with a really great package design, and that we're able to enter it for the first time, Bryan, after all these years. So that was a big thing for us. And by the way, talking about the entry fee, it's so reasonable. It's like for one entry, it's $85. If you enter anything in a major event like AIGA or Art Directors Club, I mean, come on, it's like over $100, $200 sometimes for one
Yeah.
entry.
Yeah.
And your fee is very reasonable, so people should check that out also. I mean, it's very reasonable to enter.
Yeah, and you really can, by the fee being what it is that it's relatively low. As you mentioned, there are other competitions that we reviewed before we set our fees,
Yeah.
which are in the many hundreds of dollars, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
We're just trying to cover the cost of being able to do this, but the benefit of it is that you really put yourself up against other artists and designers in the industry. So
Right.
if you come out as being a winner, it's like really coming out and top of your industry, basically. So it's something that I strongly suggest, and we really like being able to
Well,
do.
I look at, as a judge and being in the Grammy judging also, I suggest that to anybody, because making vinyl is now in line and on a par now with the Grammys. I got to admit, I mean, because of the quality line, a lot to do with the quality line of your event, and that's what makes that event, making vinyl, such an important event, because of the quality line in all areas. That's major. And the Grammys try to do that in the judging line, and you do that in the making vinyl line. So I got to emphasize that to people, that this is a very major event, along with the Grammys. I could equal it.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. We appreciate that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
So with vinyl returning and all of that real estate on the vinyl covers and the interior with the dust jackets and the colored vinyl, and it's as if the products return to the marketplace, but every inch of it, every element of it is an opportunity for creation and innovation. In particular, with the submissions you're seeing in the Making Vinyl event too, what are some of the things that you've seen that really caught your eye and said, wow, this is not just sort of someone returning to an old idea or whatever, but that there's an innovation happening here, a cool idea in vinyl that someone, grabbed this opportunity to create and bring to market?
Yeah, it's fun to see what is actually being submitted, because we actually have a category which is that is called "They Said It Couldn't Be Done," and it's really fun to see because it's not what you would imagine as a typical box set. You know, box sets can be very beautiful. That they can become very complicated. But I think it was the first competition that we did. We had an entry from Weird Al Yankovic. And what he did was he put together his entire collection inside of an accordion, which was just mind-blowing to see. You know, to take each one, to manually put it into each one of the folds. It was just crazy to see, and I was just very, very impressed by that. It was heavy, but it was certainly very cool. And it's really kind of interesting too is that, you know, of course, vinyl has always been a collecting type item, but then you see now also with some of these real special editions that people are not just turning around and selling them on eBay. They're really just holding on to them because they appreciate what's gone into, we'll say, the making of that particular vinyl itself. So I'm very happy to see that because it's quite different to maybe what vinyl was 20 years ago. I don't think that there was a lot that was going into it as what we're seeing right now.
I'm going to show you a package that was in the Grammys, and it's pretty similar to what comes into making vinyl. And you had brought it up a little bit, saying about special packaging. This is Jerry Hayden design. This is Smog design. And it's for the Decemberists. And you take it out, and you get, let's see here, a folding accordion booklet with artwork, right? You see that? And then the 45s are in each one. It's a bunch of 45s. But this is what we call special packaging, you know what I mean? And it's like, this is the stuff that we're talking about. And I think what's going on also, Bryan, is that these things are not cheap, right? I mean, we're not talking about cheap packaging. Some of it's very intricate, you know, requires a good design budget. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's also probably reflected in the cost of some of these items, too. They're not cheap. I think that Weird Al Yankovic one that I was mentioning was actually retailing for a few $100s at the time. But then again, a few $100s, you were getting all of Weird Al's work over the many of years that he's produced it. And just to have it inside of that case, that wasn't something very cheap either. And I remember that one from the Decemberists, also from Jerry Hayden. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful. And and it's something, as I mentioned before, that you kind of hold on to and cherish. It's not something that you're just looking to buy and resell it very quickly. It's something that you want to show people. And it really reflects, we'll say, what's inside of it as well, because the same type of thought goes into the music that's on the disc also.
That's exactly right. And you know what? It's also about touching. And that's what people talk about vinyl. You touch the package, right? And that's what that does. You know, you open up the package, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can open it up. You know, it's like your hands are working. And that's very important, I think, to people. And also, I think we got to bring up the most important thing about vinyl. It's the sound of vinyl, right? Which is explained in one of your, I think it's a 2018 issue or 2017, one of these ones I was showing. You go into a whole detail about the sound. And that's what makes vinyl big time. And that's why people are producing it, because they see it, thank God. You know, I was always afraid the computer was going to dominate, but it's not that at all. People are seeing and hearing the sound and relate to that to produce it. So, right, Bryan?
Yeah, I would say so. What we're seeing, of course, is streaming is going to continue to grow. There's
Right, right.
no question that streaming will be the dominating music format for well into the future. Vinyl, of course, has become very popularized before COVID, as you said, because of the sound, the feel, the touch. A lot of the people that are purchasing vinyl skew into a younger demographic, only because they haven't had, we'll say, any type of tactile type media in their growing up. So for
Yeah.
them to see a vinyl for the first time, it's the curiosity kicks in first of all, and of course if they are, we'll say, have some type of connection with the artist, that's the next big reason why they'll purchase it, and then the sound is just a tremendous benefit on top of that, which they never have imagined before.
I've interviewed a lot of musicians over the years, and most of them have put out vinyl. They put out vinyl. It's very inspiring, and they put out vinyl along with their CDs and sell it.
Yeah.
And it seems to be growing. Every time I interview a musician, it seems to be they have a vinyl. Whether you like the album cover or not, they have a vinyl, which is good.
Right.
And so it's like that's very important. It's like it's really a whole thing. And I think it's going to increase the way it's being described in Billboard and what we're talking about. I really believe that it's inspiring for me as a designer. So there's a big format, to design on. That's very important.
Right, right. Yeah, we're seeing right now that vinyl, of course, got its impetus because of Record Store Day. Record
Yeah.
Store Day should be taking a lot of credit, or
Yeah.
99% of the credit is why we're seeing, we'll say, this comeback, which isn't a comeback anymore. We can say that it's now on a very extreme trajectory for growth. But if it wasn't for them and working with the independent musicians to, we'll say, encourage them to put their music on vinyl, I don't know if we would necessarily be where we're at right now. What we're seeing, though, is the influence of a lot of the major labels that have now, we'll say, decided that their artists need to be on vinyl too. And that's why we're seeing also these production demands that have grown on top of what we're seeing as far as what people have found the actual media itself because of COVID. So we've got all of these different factors that are coming into play right now, which is causing vinyl to increase double-digit numbers. And we all expect that to remain that way for the next few years, at least.
Yeah, I mean, on the Grammy committee, I would talk to the art directors that were judging with me, and all of them said, and a lot of them were from major record companies, that vinyl is on the A list. They all said that vinyl is on the A list. I never forgot that, and it's very true. Now, what you're bringing up also is interesting because they have, I think, what they call 180 degree. They call it. It's a thicker record with the same sound that's being reproduced of all the albums right now, just reproducing all these albums to be bought, right?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the weight of the album itself, or the disc itself. 180 grams we'll say, what most will say artists are leaning towards right now. It does make the album heavier. It does, we'll say, stiffen it up. There's not necessarily a difference, though, on the way that the actual music is pressed into the record itself, because you can only press to a certain depth anyways. But it does track better on the turntable, and it just feels like what we're trying to produce which is a luxury product. So that's why a lot of artists have been switching or requesting 180 gram records. Standard record weight for a 12 inch is 140 grams. So there's a difference overall. but it makes them more expensive to produce.
Yeah.
And it makes them more expensive to ship as well. So there are some trade-offs in that respect. But overall, it comes down to what we're really trying to make is a very high quality product that people really want to keep.
I've seen some interesting records in 180 gram where, because the etching is different, the number of songs per side is different to what the albums used to be, and you'd have maybe a reissue of what was a single LP is spread over two on the 180 gram weight. And one of the interesting things is that if the timing doesn't line up and you get a blank side, the side 4 is blank, I've seen some incredible releases with etchings on them and artwork in place of the grooves.
Wow.
So, I have a Bowie 12-inch single that has an etching on one side, music on the other, that's in a heavyweight vinyl. I've seen it with Alice in Chains. So there's incredible surprises that you see on the missing sides of these heavier weight albums.
I mean, you know what I think is going on? It's a repeat of the 70s. Remember with the die cut stuff, Brian, with the strawberry box for who knows the strawberries, and then you had physical graffiti with the die cut windows. You had Cheech and Chong. All these die cut pieces and many more is being revived now. I mean, the intricacy of the packaging is coming back. That whole 70s era of special die cuts, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember the National had a entry with actually cut the inner sleeve, had a heavy board, and it was die cut with a pattern around it. The inner sleeve, you know what I mean? Besides the cut. So I mean, it's like all this intricate stuff, Brian and Pat.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the submissions that I've seen, and also, of course, when you go into your independent record store and you see what's being displayed, it's just amazing. And then also, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, is that when you start getting into all of the record art itself, so besides the etching, but you start getting into all of these crazy color splatters and different gradients that are involved. I mean, each one of those are a piece of art. And the reason why I kind of question if it's a good or a bad thing is because it takes longer to produce those particular album or those records that are in multiple colors. So when we're trying to push out as many records as we can in the shortest period of time, once we start getting into all of these different color gradients, it just slows down the entire production process.
Well, we have pictures we're going to put on this thing of the judging, but the series that we did in 2018 had a lot of records. What you're talking about, a lot of the artwork on the disc and all kinds of splatterings and colored designs. And I remember going around the table, Brian, and it was like, there's so many discs like this. I mean, it was better than the packaging almost, you know what I mean? And it was like mind blowing. And that's a whole part of the package. So it's exactly what you're talking about. And the thing that I want to say also, I just did an interview on with Sound Matters. And Sound Matters.
Mark Henshaw.
Yes. So Mark interviewed me and I called the show No Rules on Design. That was the name. I sent it to you. Actually, you should see it. It's about our album that came out, but it's about No Rules on Design. And that's what's going on now, too. So forget it. Like the record labels we did were all art with no copy on it at all. We even, on the song stack, we even put the pictures of the labels instead of side 1, side 2, which no one ever did. No one ever did. And also, the legal lines, that's the other thing. Everybody gets insecure about legal lines. We hardly had any legal lines on it. And you just have to know certain things to make a great design and be very minimal if you know what to do. And that's a big thing, I think. And a lot of these albums that are entered do that. I've seen a lot of labels without any copy at all on it, which used to, at least you had to have a copyright line, that in a curve.
Right.
Copyright by that's out. That's out, man.
Yeah.
And also the minimalization of things, and it also helps with the graphics. I mean, the less you do, the better the graphics, obviously. So that's another thing to talk about is the fact that I call it no rules on album design. No rules on album design.
Yeah, that would be an amazing topic, that's for sure. And I'd love to come back and be able to talk about different aspects of all of the packaging as well. And I can bring, of course, a lot of examples too.
Oh, I'd love that. What we've just talked about today on vinyl, the Making Vinyl event, I hope everybody gets in on this and follows up on it. And again, makingvinyl.com to enter packaging or read about the event. And along the line, the event will come out, and just follow along. It's worth it.
Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And we, of course, are very grateful for your support, Spencer. As you being as a judge and promoting us quite regularly, we appreciate that very much. And Patrick, thanks again for allowing me to kind of give a little bit of a background about Making Vinyl and the packaging awards that we do. And anytime if you want to receive our information, newsletters, you can follow us on the social channels. And of course, like you said, Spencer, makingvinyl.com is going to be the best place to catch everything.
Come back after the event so we can look at some of the stuff, of course, Brian, and maybe hopefully Larry will come on. I want to say big hello to Larry. Larry Jaffe's been a big thing in my life and works with you. And I was on Larry's packaging committees when he was with Media Line for many years.
Right.
And I remember after that, he always wanted to have an event. He would call me up and something wouldn't work out. And all of a sudden he called me up about Making Vinyl. I said, oh my God, I love this. Making Vinyl. Just the words, Making Vinyl, Brian. I'm so happy you guys connected, and you knew him for a long time too.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful guy, Larry.